Hallo YouTube und willkommen zu einer weiteren Reaction Time. Diesmal hoffentlich nicht zu viel zu spät editiert. Ups. Aber ne, heute sind wir versammelt für Dings auf die Hollow Knight Lore zu reagieren, weil jetzt Silksong rauskommt. Stream ist halt jetzt ein Tag vor Silksong. Das heißt, wir müssen uns die Lore mal antun, damit ich überhaupt etwas checke, weil sonst bin ich einfach lost. Und ich würde sagen, wir verlieren nicht viel Zeit und springen dann rein hier in die Hollow Knight Timeline. Complete Hollow Knight Story and Lore von Skyrionn ist ein Jahr alt. Es gab schon ein anderes Hollow Knight Video, was, denke ich, auch die Lore aufgreift und alles so. Und auch schon sehr viel Aufmerksamkeit bekam währenddessen. Aber ich habe mal dieses hier genommen, weil es halt aktueller ist. Und ich könnte mir vorstellen, dass vielleicht durch Merch-Drops oder irgendwas Hinweisen von Team Cherry vielleicht ein paar Sachen neu aufgedeckt wurden irgendwie. Und ja, es ist ein 1,5 Stunden Video, so holt euch Popcorn oder irgendetwas. So, das hier wird lange. Let's go! Und ich habe die falsche Taste geklickt, leck mich. You shall see the blinding light that plagues the dreams. Ah ja, by the way, ist Englisch, also viel Spaß, die Leute. Warum habe ich keinen Sound? Ist der Tab der Tab ist gemutet. Okay, ich wollte gerade sagen, warum habe ich keinen Sound? Warte. Professioneller Streamer, let's go. Also Playbacks, die Dings, Subtitles machen wir mal an. Hier, United Kingdom, let's go. Schon besser. Also, du sollst blinding, okay.
In the wilds across a vast wasteland lay a region that would one day become home to the grand kingdom of Hallownest.
Geil.
A tragic tale of light and darkness.
So wie die Dunkelheit waren wir das, ja.
Many ages before, deep underground, into the very bedrock of the tunnels was a civilization. The bugs here devoted their worship not to a lord, power, or king,
Im Void,
but
maybe?
to the very darkness itself, the Void.
Ich habe es einfach wegen halt dem Gameplay, was ich kenne aus dem Spiel, halt jetzt einfach so in den Ring geworfen, aber war actually sogar white. Let's go.
Even now, not a lot is known about this ancient civilization deep down in the abyss of the Void. What we do know is that these bugs were intelligent and expanded their reach into the tunnels and open caverns above.
Okay.
They discovered that soul animated and gave their bodies life, a powerful force that flowed through the very air itself. To contain and manipulate this substance, these ancient bugs constructed soul totems.
Oh, das heißt, die Dinger haben die ganze Zeit den Arsch retten. Manchmal haben actually mit dieser antiken Zivilisation zu tun. Vielen Dank, antike Zivilisation. Die haben auch meinen Arsch gerettet. Zumal es in Path of Pain, wie man sich vorstellen kann. Ja.
Across the lands, their civilization created weapons through nailsmiths. Their scholars recorded their history on arcane eggs.
Ich würde gerade sagen, Arcane's Egg, ne?
Some were believed to have weaponized the very void itself.
The Shadow
Their
Dash.
constructions were magnificent. It was as if the rock itself possessed a will and adapted to the desire of the bugs that inhabited this
Okay,
region.
krass.
Despite how grand this civilization became, one day it simply came to an end.
Und wie?
Looking back, it is unknown what happened to this ancient civilization, but in their fall, artifacts of their triumphs became a part of the land. The bodies of the largest inhabitants decayed and showed those who traveled through that a civilization once existed here. Deep down in the abyss, the void simply existed in a sea of darkness. And when there is darkness,
There's
there
light.
is also light to counter it.
Wahrscheinlich die Absolute Radiance, weil die wird ja so absolutes Licht hingestellt. Wahrscheinlich diese Dings, dieser, Tribe halt auf Englisch, jetzt mal das Wort, jetzt aus meinem Fall, ich fällt es gerade nicht im Deutschen ein, von Dings, von der Seherin, die wir für die Traumnadel hatten. Die hat ja von so ihrem Stamm und so geredet.
This greater world was large and home to many bugs with simple thoughts. There were, however, higher beings of great power. One of these was the Radiance. This giant moth was one of the most powerful creatures, and she shone brightly. As a being of light, the Radiance became an instant enemy to the Void. As a
I mean, das sieht man in den Endings, also wenn wir Radiants besiegen, entweder in dem normalen Story-Ending oder halt nach P5, wir zerfetzen die ordentlich als in unserer Void-Form. Also ja, dass die zwei gegeneinander stehen, ist sicher.
Higher being, the Radiants had natural, incredible abilities.
Ja,
On
definitiv.
the land of this fallen civilization, the Radiants brought into existence a new intelligent species.
Okay.
Having been created by a higher being, the Moth tribe worshipped the Radiance and her light. They basked in it. The Radiance was a beacon of light. Alongside her ability to create life and light, she also taught the Moth how to interact with, influence, and manipulate Essence.
Okay.
Essence powered dreams, and in turn, the entirety of the Dream Realm.
Oh
A
boy.
realm separated from the physical world by a veil. Now, the expanse of dreams once consisted of dreams and nightmares. However, at one point in time, these realms were split.
Okay.
Under the guidance of the Radiants, the Moth tribe discovered the countless realms of dreams. Each one was formed from the memories of the living and the dead. And
Ja, das sehen wir ja. Man sieht zum Beispiel die lebenden Träume, wie zum Beispiel bei Dawn Defender. Man kann hier mit den Traum geschlagen und dann sieht man den alten Ruhm von ihm am besten, wie in seiner ursprünglichen Form war, wo er dem Königreich gedient hat und alles so. Hingegen hat man aber auch, denkst die Überreste von dem Seelenmeister halt, in seinem, wo man im Syl-Tyrann-Kampf ist eben, wo er halt tot ist, also das mit dem Leben und Tod, das sieht man definitiv halt auch im Gameplay integriert. Aber was mich interessiert, ist diese Splittung von normalen Träumen und Albträumen.
entire realm could be formed from thought and will alone. From the bugs, plants, and gods of the land, the dream realms were home to almost anything that the imagination could form, all powered by essence that floated like dust in these powerful realms.
Und genau diese Traumwelten irgendwie haben ja auch als Sieger gewirkt mit den 3 Masken, die dann eben den Hollow Knight innegehalten haben. Und halt, ich sehe gerade, dass wir erst 4 Minuten drin sind. Das wird ein langer Stream, aber ich freue mich drauf, weil dann wissen wir wenigstens ein bisschen, mit was für einer Welt wir es zu tun haben, mehr genau jetzt für morgen.
As for the Nightmare realm,
Ja.
it was also powered by a sort of essence, flame.
Flame.
These realms were similar, but
Okay, ich wollte gerade sagen, vom Design her sah es aus wie das von von Grimms Truppe.
darker in nature to the dream realm. Controlled by the Nightmare Heart, another higher being, troops were sent out to ruined lands to collect Nightmare Essence flames to fuel the Nightmare Heart. In their devotion and worship of the Radiants, the Moth tribe explored essence, soul, and dreams. In this exploration, they created the Dream Nail.
Oh ja, das
This
ist...
powerful nail was incredible. The moths pierced the veil between the waking and the dream worlds. They extracted soul and essence from living creatures. They used the dream world to essentially teleport across vast distances with dream gates.
Die verdammt praktisch sind. Und ich vielleicht erst Leute benutzen hätte sollen und nicht einfach so im Endgame erst realisieren, dass ich das Ding habe, also benutzen kann. Vollidiotin, check. Alter, das war wirklich so ein Griff ins Klo bei mir. Aber ja, das... Aber interessant, viel von den Sachen, die mit der Lord zu tun haben, sind auch stark ins Gameplay integriert. Es ist nicht irgendwie so out of nowhere. Das ist geil.
And they even entered the minds of the bugs around them to discover their darkest secrets. Yet, some minds were too powerful to penetrate.
Absolute Radiance oder ist das die
These
Königin?
Dreamwalkers have been crafted with a light brighter than essence, and under the Radiance's lead, they learned how to shape dreams. The light also kept the void at bay. The Radiance had used her light to create
Yep.
life. She had offered them knowledge of and access to the dream realms. All she wanted in return was their worship. And yet, the Radiance was not the only higher being that had come to this land.
Okay, wer denn noch? Finde ich ganz,
To the west, the
yeah.
giant slug
Oh.
dreamt of a world of luscious leaves, luxurious bushes, swirling vines, lakes of acid, and green children to walk amongst the forests. As a higher being of light, her dream transformed the barren, rocky caverns of this bleak land into lush chambers full of vegetation and lakes.
Voll mit fucking Spikes, die manchmal abfucken ohne Ende. Aber ne, eigentlich vom Design her mag ich Green Path sehr, sehr.
From her dream also walked the Moskin into the physical world, the green children of These once empty caverns,
Gott, dieser Raum.
chambers, tunnels, and basins became home to the life, soul, and essence of Green Path. Within, the green children of just like the moth tribe of the Radiants, worshipped their god and erected temples to honor and worship her, one of which was constructed at the Lake of a site that the higher being communed with her children. Each plant and bug, no matter how big or small, was important to the Moskin, for they had been created within the mind of Because of this, the Moskin tribe were very territorial and protective of Green Path and those who sought to explore it.
Das erklärt, warum wir oft auf die Fresse bekommen, wenn wir hingehen.
To the southeast of Green Path lay the fungal wastes. It was in the southern part of this region that the Mantis tribe formed a village. The Mantis did not appear to worship any higher being and were completely self-sufficient. Led by their Mantis lords, the youngest of this tribe were encouraged to kill to prove their strength, to claim their place in the tribe.
Survival of the fittest.
The Mantis valued honor and tradition. They did not like outsiders, but did at least respect one if they engaged in an honorable fight.
So wie wir. Deswegen, jedes Mal, nachdem wir dann sie, wenn man ja an sie vorbeigeht, nachdem man sie besiegt hat, verbeugen sie sich immer. Ich finde das so cool, das ist so ein schönes Detail irgendwie.
If their challenger died, they died. However, if they lived, they were offered freedom to explore the village.
So wie wir. Weil es ist ein komplett anderer, Willkommensgruß eigentlich, wenn du ins Mantisdorf gehst, nachdem du die Metzlots besiegt hast. Du wirst wirklich willkommen, ja, teilweise. Doch, ich glaube, das ist sogar dieser Raum jetzt, wo ich gerade ansprechen wollte, bei Mark of Pride, bekommt man erst, nachdem man die Metzlot besiegt hat und den Respekt anerlangt hat und kann dann in die verschiedensten Räume überhaupt erst rein, so auf ein paar Stellen.
Mantis' ability to defend themselves did come in useful to the west of their village.
Oh Gott, nicht Tiefnest. Ja, das ist, glaube ich, mein Hassgebiet. Ich mag Tiefnest nicht.
Home to the Spider tribe and later the Weaver tribe, who had traveled from a faraway land. Many speculated this to be Farloom. At this moment, this is just speculation.
Was ist Farloom?
The inhabitants of Deep Nest were arguably the most intelligent species of this land.
Okay.
The Weavers crafted stories, shields, and spells on their looms as they recorded their history on spools. Their village was meticulously crafted by the arachnids who created houses of silk that hung across a deep cavern. It was in these that their king and queen monitored the population, and their midwife helped birth children. It was also here that the arachnids plotted to expand their reach by force across the land.
Ei.
The issue they had was that the Mantis blocked their access to it.
Und sie sind hier direkt verbunden und das hat sich dann nicht so verbreitet, wie sie wollten. Interesting.
The entirety of this land had once worshipped the void, and after that civilization had fallen, many more had popped up and claimed their regions. From the distant village of Deep Nest, the Mantis Lords of Mantis Village, to the Moskin of Green Path, the mysterious snail shamans that manipulated soul into power spells, the dreamwalkers of the moth, and even the emptiness of the abyss. This land had awoken once again. Across it, there were also simple-minded bugs without true thoughts. They just wandered in the darkness. As the ages passed, these colonies lived on and thrived in their homes. Within Greenpath, however, the Mosskin noticed that Un had started to fade away and her interactions with them reduced in number.
Okay, warum?
She promised that one day she would call for them to return to the dream they had come from. Until then, they just had to be patient. To the east of Greenpath, another species came to the verdant
Is this a Jäger?
region. This was a family of hunters
Yep.
who even hunted each other for fun.
Okay.
Over their time there, the family moved away until only one remained, alone in his small area of Greenpath.
Den kennen wir natürlich. Den brauchen wir natürlich für die Jäger-Achievements alles so und für das Jäger-Handbuch.
As it burrowed through the mountains of the wasteland, a worm finally stopped and settled. The worm were, just like Un and the Radiants, higher beings of light. This worm looked at the land ahead and saw what it could become. Of the many abilities of this god species, the worm could see the future to an extent. He saw that this land could become a grand kingdom if he let it.
Okay.
The land was home to many bugs of sentient mind, but there were many others that clawed in the darkness, unaware of anything, just bugs. He would become their king.
Das ist wahrscheinlich der Pale King daneben. Also der bleiche König wäre es dann, glaube ich, stumpf übersetzt. Nehme ich mal an. Ups, ich habe gemutet, aus Versehen, oh sorry.
The worm entered a process of metamorphosis and shed his large form. He became small.
Oh. Das heißt, der kommt da raus. Damn, okay.
Just like them.
Huh.
In this new form, the worm went by the title of the Pale King.
Und was ich mal so mitbekommen habe von der Lore, müsste das auch unser Vater sein normalerweise, ne?
Shell transformed the kingdom's edge into an ashen wasteland as it decayed. The Pale King was a being of power, and as he looked at the land ahead of him, he claimed it as the kingdom of Hallownest.
Und das ist auch gut übrig
The
geblieben.
worm in general had incredible abilities. Not only could the king see the future and pull lesser bugs into his thrall, but he also formed a beacon that instilled the simple-minded bugs of Hallownest with sentience and intelligence.
Okay.
Under his beacon, the bugs of Hallownest saw the Pale King as the leader, ruler, and the higher being who had created everything within Hallownest. Yet an issue arose for those who sought to leave the kingdom.
Oh.
For if they moved too far away from Hallownest, they would relinquish the precious mind that the king had granted them. For the bugs already with sapience, their time in Hallownest, for the most part, would become a distant, foggy memory.
Okay, das ist dubios. Also, ich dachte mir jetzt als erstes, dieser bleiche König wäre ziemlich gut. Wirklich so der Good Guy und alles so. Wirklich einfach will, dass die Leute gut gehen, aber dass er ein bisschen die Erinnerung fuschen geht, ist scheiße. Boah, dass er Dings bei anderen nicht über unendliche Länge leider es aufhalten kann mit dem, I guess, höheren Lebensformen ist halt schade. Aber das mit den Erinnerungen wegzuschwimmen, vielleicht hat das auch ein ungewollter Side-Effekt, who knows.
By the Pale King's side was the White Lady,
Die Königin.
another higher being of roots.
Warte, die sieht man doch, Dings, in Queen's Garden. Ist das nicht die White Lady? Die heißt doch so.
Leadership of Worm and Roots, Hallownest would thrive. Their union was solidified with the King's Soul, a charm with two halves that, when combined, produced unlimited soul from the very air.
Ja.
In the depths of the land, just above the abyss, the palace grounds were
Voilà.
constructed, and within, so too was the White Palace.
PTSD. Oh mein Gott, oder wenn ich nur White Palace höre, ich krieg Flashbacks. Oh Gott, aber Alter, ich muss aber auch sagen, White Palace, abgesehen vom Gameplay her, wo ich gelitten habe, allerdings, es hat ein mega cooles Design. Also jedes Mal, wenn ich gesehen habe, war ich wirklich erstaunt. Und erschreckt zugleich.
This place became home to the Pale King, White Lady, and those chosen to be their royal retainers.
Die Typen, der
The
White
king
Defender
was
eben auch, ne?
fascinated with the void below and wanted to form the entire kingdom of Hallownest above the palace.
Deswegen ist es so nah
Void
dran.
was an interesting and mysterious force. To keep it calm, the king had a lighthouse constructed
okay, das
within the
also.
abyss and ordered one of his subjects to keep the light active at all times.
Bei angesichts, dass wir es im Spiel wieder aktivieren, nehme ich mal, dass irgendwann das nicht mehr der Fall war. Warum? Werden wir wahrscheinlich noch rausfinden.
With Void passive in this state, the king had some of the substance brought to his palace so that he could experiment with and explore it in his workshop.
Warum habe ich das Gefühl, dass das wahrscheinlich der Fall von Dings seinem Königreich hervorbringen wird?
From his work, the king created several void constructs. He filled heavy white armor with the substance,
Oh, okay.
for void had no will and no mind to think. In this state, it did what the king commanded. These armored void entities were named King's Molds and were stationed within and across the palace
Okay.
to defend it.
Seine
The
eigene
Pale
Armee.
King stayed within his palace and rarely left, but from here he had a lot of work to do. The bugs of Hallownest had sworn their loyalty to their king.
Yep.
He had promised them that Hallownest would last eternal, and he truly believed it would. Although many bugs had woken up and gained the ability to think, feel, and act of their own accord, many of the bugs of this land already had these abilities.
Yep.
In an attempt to develop a working Grand Kingdom, the Pale King reached out to the tribes that existed within the borders of his Hallownest to unite the land.
Ich wollte gerade sagen, zusammenarbeiten.
Each tribe could offer something valuable. Over the ages, the Moth tribe had still worshipped the Radiance and her light, but several turned their backs on her and chose to worship the Pale King instead when he asked
Okay.
for their place in Hallownest. The Moth offered their ability to communicate with the Dream Realm.
Okay.
In doing so, they became the caretakers of the dead.
Deswegen sieht man die Serie noch in Westinghouse sehen, bei den Friedhöfen.
Within the resting grounds and Spirit's Glade, the Moths granted the bugs of Hallownest a place of sanctuary, peace and serenity before and after
Haben sie auch
death.
hinbekommen.
They conducted rituals, communed with the departed, and helped those who grieved accept their loss through the manipulation of essence. To the west, the hive-minded mushrooms of the fungal waste saw the king's power of foresight as a form of protection.
Deswegen,
So
ja.
they accepted his offer to join the kingdom. The Mosskin of Greenpath waited for the call of Un
Yeah.
to return to the dream. Yet, while territorial, they welcomed the Pale King and allowed him to have roads constructed across their land.
Oh, okay.
However, they also left a warning. If any strayed from the king's road, they would face the laws of Un.
Okay.
The Pale King
Haben eine Ausnahme, aber sollten wirklich aufpassen, weil sonst wird's brenzlig. Okay. Interesting. Ich frage mich da, wo man an alles von dieser Lore rankommt, aber es ist insane.
also asked for more from the Mosskin. He and the White Lady liked the luscious region of Greenpath so much that they decided to claim the entire southern region. The Queen
Deswegen sind die zwei so ähnlich. Okay. Das heißt, es war eigentlich Teil von Greenpath, aber es wurde dann in Queen's Garden umgewandelt, I guess.
Queen's Garden still resembled the dream that Un had created it from, but as a retreat for the Queen, it was adapted with greenhouses and statues of royalty. As this
Jetzt, nachdem ich das weiß, jetzt, man sieht es jetzt auch, weil es sieht wirklich halt wie so ein Hybrid, also so eine Hybrid-Location aus Dings Greenpath und ebenso dem White Palace Design.
area had been annexed from Greenpath, it was heavily guarded and only those chosen by the king or queen were allowed access. While several of the tribes within the borders of Hallownest had agreed to become a part of the kingdom, there were others
Ich wollte gerade sagen, Tiefnest. Natürlich, diese
The Weaver
Bastarde!
and Spider tribe of Deepnest Hallownest had no interest in becoming a part of the Pale King's kingdom. They wanted the land for themselves. The Mantis tribe also declined the Pale King's offer to join the kingdom of Hallownest.
Aber es ist friedlich geblieben,
In this
ne?
case, however, a deal was made between the two parties. The Pale King offered the Mantis lords their sovereignty if they kept the aggressive population of Deep Nest sealed inside.
Okay.
In which they agreed.
Was sie
There
so
was
verraten, ja.
also the bees of the hive to the east. Their hive had been constructed within the kingdom's borders, but the
Einer der geilsten designten Gebiete auch, muss ich sagen. Also der Hive sieht wirklich verdammt cool aus.
Queen Vesper, decided to keep out of the problems and politics of a growing kingdom as the hive sealed their entrance.
Deswegen müssen sie im Spiel aufmachen.
Although some had chosen not to become a part of the kingdom of Hallownest, the Worm's Beacon did bring travelers from other lands, and they came upon the relics of an ancient civilization, one of which was found to the north of the kingdom's edge.
Okay.
Several travelers discovered the large remains of an ancient beast. It was inside that they formed the Colosseum of
okay.
Fools, an arena of entertainment where the strongest warriors fought trials.
Also eine komplett Leiche für eine Arena benutzt.
Having pulled together the tribes of Hallownest, the Pale King and White Lady watched as the rest of the kingdom flourished in the caverns above the White Palace.
City of
King's
Tears.
Pass welcomed new bugs to the kingdom of Hallownest with a large bridge that led to the small town of Dirtmouth. Although
Dort wollen wir unsere Reise eben anfangen. In King's Pass und dann kommen wir eben in Mistmund an. Oder wie ich es schön mal vernannt habe, aus Versehen, Dortmund.
modest, it offered access to the crossroads below, stores that sold interesting wares, easy access to the top of Crystal Peak, a graveyard for the fallen, and even the opportunity to meet Confessor Gigi, a powerful entity who had the ability to manipulate Void in return for a rancid egg. The creation of the crossroads below Dirtmouth allowed the kingdom to pulse with life as the bugs explored the towns and cities. Hallownest thrived in trade, refuge, and adventure. While Sol was regarded as a great energy source, Hallownest relied mostly on the crystals of Crystal Peak to power the kingdom.
Okay.
In doing so, it meant that bugs were hired to mine these purple gems with the help of Glimbacks and Shardamites to help them transport the heavy loads.
Ich bin gespannt, ob wir jetzt noch eine Erklärung bekommen, warum die so aggressiv sind, wenn wir da eindringen. Wahrscheinlich, weil die nicht ihren Job oder so verlieren oder I guess Teil ihres Jobs ist halt sicherzustellen, dass keiner an die Kristalle geht und wir werden dann als Bedrohung angesehen.
For those who followed the Pilgrim's Way through the verdant wilds of Greenpath and the fungal wastes, they would reach the heart of the kingdom, Hallownest's capital city. A place in which they were promised to share in the city's glory. Their wishes would be granted and their truths revealed. During Hallownest's golden age, this city went by one name, but it has been lost to time.
Oh, das heißt, wir wissen gar nicht mehr den Namen.
Due to many of the events to come,
Oh no.
it would later become known as the City of Tears.
Oh je.
The heart of Hallownest was huge. The western quarter housed the common bug, and the east housed the more influential, wealthier, and royal. Upon their entrance to the city, the pilgrims would have noticed the grand spires that darted into the peak of this cavern, the statues of powerful knights, the guardians who protected the civilians, and they would have heard the melodic sounds of Marissa the songstress from the pleasure house. The city even had a pretty advanced water structure that ran underground.
Yep.
These royal waterways dealt with the city's waste, and for the items that fell down into these sewers, they slowly collected together and formed a giant pit.
Oh ja.
Back within the city, the Soul Sanctum offered the Scholars of Soul the ability to explore and understand just what the substance was capable of, as they used soul totems and containers to store it, just as the lost ancient civilization had done ages before.
Und von was ich mich erinnere, von Dialog her, nachdem man Dings die Seelentyrann umbringt, er redet davon, wie er mit Seele und irgendetwas so, oder irgendwie auf jeden Fall hinbekommen hat, unsterblich zu werden, dass anscheinend der König auf ihn eifersüchtig dafür war, oder irgendetwas so. Und dass das im Endeffekt sein Niedergang war, oder irgendetwas so. Wie wahr das ist, das werden wir gleich sehen.
In the highest spire of the city, Lurian the Watcher observed the entire city
drei
with
Träumer.
his telescope. He was one of the most loyal to his king, and as a high-ranking member of the kingdom, he was even granted Watcher Knights to protect him in his role. As the capital of Hallownest, various materials were imported in from the surrounding regions. Some of many were silks, artwork and fabrics. While so many resources came in, only few were sent out. This kingdom thrived on the currency of geo, adventure, and many even traded in charms, powerful accessories that contained a spark of power woven into their very cores. They offered those who wore them the ability to change how they interacted with the world, enhance strength, the potential to manipulate soul at will, to enhance and extend their lives, and protection were just some of many adaptations. Charms were highly sought after, but they were very limited. Each one was unique. There may have been many ways to craft these items, but the darkest secret of the kingdom was that they formed from a dying wish. The Pale King.
Das heißt wahrscheinlich, jeder dieser Charms, dem eingesammelt ist, eine Reflexion von etwas, das sich jemand gewünscht hat in seinen letzten Momenten oder so, oder nach dem Tod. So ein Todeswunsch. Vielleicht das Traumschild, vielleicht ist ein Dings von jemandem gekommen, wo sich nicht schützen konnte oder irgendetwas so, und deswegen ist das geformt. Maybe so. Das ist actually sehr interessant, dass so die Charms entstanden. Und Frage ist auch natürlich, wie viele Charms gab es eigentlich insgesamt? Also es gibt wahrscheinlich viele noch in Holland alleine schon, die Dings nie gefunden wurden mehr.
King's actions had built a large civilization that spanned for miles and miles through several territories and biomes. Yet, he spent the most of his time in the White Palace to offer their worship to him. The citizens of Hallownest fashioned king's idols so that they could physically thank and revere him, even if it was from a distance. The king's knights were also given ornate seals as symbols of their service to the kingdom. Every bug had a role in this melting pot of culture. While the grubs could tunnel through the caverns as they awaited metamorphosis, not every citizen had this ability. To navigate the kingdom, the citizens of Hallownest could have travelled by foot through Kingdom's Way, and a lot did. The king did, however, implement other forms of travel. Hallownest was home to the stag beetle. These large bugs loved to run, and with Hallownest as their home, they ran through the long, empty tunnels of the land. To give the stags a role in the kingdom, stag stations were opened up across the land. In essence, if a bug required transportation to the other end of Hallownest, they simply rang a bell and a stag would be there. These stations opened up the kingdom even more. From Dirtmouth, Greenpath, the Fog Canyon, the capital city, and even Deepnest, the stags of...
Stimmt, sie haben irgendwie hinbekommen, dass sie sich aber da verbinden, wenigstens. Interesting. So viel sie auch gegen das Königreich waren, aber das haben sie erlaubt, aus irgendeinem Grund. Vielleicht mit einem schlechten Hintergedanken, who knows?
Hallownest navigated the long tunnels for the citizens. A station was also constructed in Queen's Gardens. However, only few were permitted to utilize this path. The stags loved their role in Hallownest, and after a long day of work, they returned to the stag nest, their home and place of birth. It was here that they swapped stories about interesting passengers, spoke of new tunnels they had discovered, and raised their young. The stag stations were immensely important. Even still, the king also implemented another system to traverse Hallownest, a tram system. In their construction of the tram line, The tracks ran from the resting grounds, the crossroads, Kingdom's Edge, and the basin close to where the White Palace had been constructed. The workers did also attempt to manufacture a line that ran through Deepnest, but the Spider Tribe killed anyone who stepped on
Yep.
their land. As a result, the construction of this line was abandoned. With a dream to craft the perfect nail and nails for the land's fighters, a nailsmith set up a workshop just outside of the capital city. Even in a mostly safe kingdom like Hallownest, there were still dangers.
Ja.
To create this perfect weapon, the smith sought out pale ore, a rare ore connected somehow to the higher pale beings of the land.
Ich weiß nicht, vielleicht irgendwie... Ich weiß nicht, ein Stück Haut oder so, I guess, von diesen Würmdingern oder so. I don't know.
With their weapons, warriors came to the ultimate Nailmaster Sly for training in the art of combat. Oro, Mato, and Shio were just 3 known students.
Die kennen wir.
The Fog Canyon became home to one of Hallownest's greatest minds, Monomon the Teacher. In this region, thick with fog and cackling electricity, this large jellyfish had her archive constructed. It was here that she researched the land, its inhabitants, and stored the kingdom's knowledge. As a teacher, she also offered her knowledge to her students, one of which was Quirrell.
Ja, voilà.
This golden age of Hallownest truly offered a place for every bug, creature, and traveler. It was
Ich frage mich aber so langsam, was wird jetzt gleich passieren, damit das alles niederbricht? Ich nehme mal an, es hat etwas mit dem, mit der Seuche da zu tun, mit der, mit dem, was halt in so einen Bruder investiert hat.
because of the culture and traditions that
Was, glaube ich, dann Hand in Hand mit der Radiance müsste gehen. Das heißt, die hat wahrscheinlich irgendwie ihre Hand da drin.
Pale King had perfectly crafted that the 5 great knights of Hallownest were revered. Zemur had travelled from a land serene and
Sie war
brought with
Teil.
her the delicate flower.
Yep.
Immensely fragile flowers that contained a power that even now few understand.
Yep. Und irgendwie sind die so stark, dass sie den Abgrund fernhalten können. Also, das ist insane, was für eine Blume das actually ist. Also, bin gespannt, ob man die mehr sehen wird im Silksong.
Isma was regarded as a kind warrior and had some connection to the acid lakes of Hallownest,
Okay.
although unconfirmed. This suggests that she could have had some sort of connection to Un.
Okay.
Hegemol was the largest of the Great 5 and was known to make his friends laugh. Drya was the fiercest of the warriors.
Und ich meine, das ist die Richtung, wo dann der eine Wurm dann halt benutzt. Also der falsche Ritter oder halt der Failed Champion eben.
And then there was Ogrim, the knight who took his oath to the kingdom the most seriously.
Der White Defender.
While the kingdom thrived just outside of the borders, the tribe of Deepnest suffered a great loss. The ruler died, and control of Deepnest was left to their partner, Hera. While only a common beast, the weavers and spiders of Deepnest still regarded her as their queen, and under her rule, they attempted to move on from their loss.
Okay.
Under the worship and the leadership of the Pale King, a barren cavern of simple bugs had transformed into a grand civilization with doctors, adventurers, singers, poets, traders, and so many more.
wurde
Over
riesig.
these ages, the king's guiding light had helped them thrive, but his influence had also extinguished another. The Moth tribe had initially turned their backs on their creator upon the arrival of the worm, and over this time, they had forgotten her. The Radiance, however, would not be forgotten.
Oh, oh, das klingt nicht gut. Das klingt mir nach einem sauren Gott. Oh no.
The ancient light of the Radiance had been forgotten by the Moths of Hallownest. In an attempt to make them and the rest of the population of the kingdom remember her, the Radiance entered their dreams. As they slept, the
Okay.
citizens dreamt of a burning light, and she appeared to them. This light threatened to break their minds as it pulled the first victims into a deep slumber. When they awoke, they became feral and aggressive
Oh,
as
diese
they
leuchtenden Augen.
reverted back to the simple minds of their ancestors before the arrival and gift of sapience from the king. That was, if they accepted the call of union she offered in these dreams. The majority of Hallownest dreamt of this forgotten light, and the king urged his people to resist the forgotten light that plagued their dreams. As a result of these desperate attempts to be remembered, and the king's orders to ignore and reject her, these dreams and light manifested into an infection.
Uh-oh.
Over his time in Hallownest, the Pale King had explored the void and understood that the Radiance threatened to destroy everything he had formed. He had to act. Interestingly enough, within Mantis Village, the Mantis were naturally immune to her call. The Radiance existed solely within the Dream Realm. So, the Pale King and White Lady formed a plan to completely remove her connection to the waking world.
Okay.
The madness of the infection spread across.
Oh, und ich kann mir vorstellen, wie das ausgelaufen ist. Ein Gefäß, welches sie einfängt eben und sie dann fernhält. Beziehungsweise erinnert sie in einen Traum festhält von jemandem, oder wie?
The entire kingdom of Hallownest as the population declined.
Das wird gefährlich.
To seal the Radiance and her influence away mentally and physically, the king turned to the void. Only an entity, a vessel with no mind to think, no will to break, and no voice to cry, born of God and void, could hold the Radiance. The Pale King had created several void constructs to protect and maintain the kingdom over the ages. This one would just be harder to perfect.
Okay.
In a union of worm and root, the Pale King and White Lady had many children. Each one was birthed in the abyss, where they died, were hollowed out, and then inhabited by void.
Oh, wow, okay, das macht's düster. Das heißt, du willst mir sagen, all diese Geister, die wir unten sehen, sind unsere Geschwister? Okay, das gibt mir actually gerade Gänsehaut. Oh,
The
damn.
king and queen murdered what appeared to be thousands of their children in an attempt to create a pure vessel that could contain the radiance.
Yikes.
To the king, no cost was too great to save his kingdom from the infection. The void shades of the abandoned children were left at the bottom of the abyss as the king sought out that one perfect vessel. And when the pure vessel eventually revealed itself, the king left the abyss with it and sealed the entrance behind him. His discarded children were simply left down there. The creation of this pure vessel had come at a great cost, but it was important to save the kingdom.
Und deswegen ist es mit dem King-Brand eben versperrt im Game. Okay.
The vessel, however, was just one part of the containment of the Radiance.
Oh, boah, jetzt geht's los, ab. Das ist wirklich saugut. Also einerseits das Video ist verdammt gut gemacht, wirklich. Und einfach auch generell die Story ist. Ich weiß nicht, ob das jetzt einfach zu tun hat mit wie Team Cherry die Story aufgebaut hat, beziehungsweise uns erzählt. Oder jetzt wie das Video ist kompakt. Also es ist so interessant nachzuhören.
As the king brought the pure vessel to the White Palace to raise it for its purpose, the king began the second stage of the plan. The pure vessel, when grown, would be sealed within the Temple of the Black Egg, but powerful seals had to be formed to keep it closed, to trap
Und da kommen jetzt Lumion, Hera und Monomo eben ins Spiel, ne?
it inside. Seals that only 3 powerful dreamers would form if they entered an eternal sleep. Lurian the Watcher volunteered for this role out of loyalty to his king, and Monoman the Teacher of Fog Canyon also accepted this great responsibility. For the third and final seal, the Pale King reached out to Hera the Beast of Deepnest. Although her tribe had refused to become a part of Hallownest, the Radiance infection had also affected them. Even so, Hera had a request.
Die wäre?
Hera had lost her partner, but she desperately wanted a child. In a union between tribes, the Pale King gave Hera the Beast what she desired. Together, they created a child of God and the Beast.
Oh, du willst mir sagen, das heißt, Hera wollte halt ein Kind und das heißt, der König und sie haben eins gemacht dann. Müsste das nicht Hornet sein dann?
As Deepnest awaited the birth.
Weil wenn ich mich richtig erinnere, wenn man ja bei bei Hera ankommt, redet Hornet über sie als und es klingt so, als wäre ihre Mutter, ja.
Of their queen's spawn. The Pale King returned to the White Palace and spent time with the vessel, his child. Over this time, the vessel was seen by the population of Hallownest as their savior that would seal away the Radiance, their Hollow Knight.
Der Hohlritter. Oh, das sieht ja aus Path of Pain. Ah!
Soon, the time came and the Hollow Knight was brought to the Temple of the Black Egg and it was chained within. In a ritual, the Radiance was summoned to the Knight's dream and as it had no will, no mind and no suffering, the light was trapped within. Across Hallownest, the Dreamers prepared to complete their role in this plan. Monoman the teacher stored herself within her archives.
Yep.
As a dreamer, the power of this ritual already protected her to an extent. However, she also put in place another level of security. The teacher formed a connection between her mask and the container she would be placed in to dream. If someone or something did attempt to access her physical form, they would require her mask. A mask that she gave to her apprentice, Quirrell. To protect his teacher, Quirrell left Hallownest with the mask, and as he moved further away from the king's beacon, his memories of this crumbling kingdom faded away. Within the capital city, at the peak of the spire, Lurien the Watcher lay down and slept as his Watcher Knights protected the entrance to his body. Over in Deepnest, Hera the Beast and the Spider Tribe were overjoyed with the birth of their princess, Hornet. Hera was only able to spend a small amount of time with her child before she had to enter the Beast Den to also go to sleep. As the three dreamers went to sleep, they entered the dream realm and became seals on the Temple of the Black Egg. With the Radiance sealed away, trapped within the Hollow Knight inside the Black Egg Temple, sealed by the Dreamers, the kingdom breathed a sigh of relief. Many of the bugs went to the temple to pray, and a memorial fountain was constructed inside of the walls of the capital city.
Ich hab erst jetzt gecheckt, stimmt, das ist der Hollow Knight. Oh lol.
Structure to remind them of the great sacrifice that not only the Hollow Knight had made, but also
ja, die drei Träume sind
the
herum.
Dreamers.
Huh. Aber irgendwas ist schiefgegangen. Irgendwas ist schiefgegangen.
The creation of the Hollow Knight and sacrifice of the Dreamers to save the kingdom weighed heavily on the White Lady. It was her children that had been discarded in the abyss to find that one pure vessel. She felt shame for her role in this plan. To stop herself from the creation of future offspring, the White Lady travelled to the Queen's gardens. With her powers of roots, she bound herself to the ground. Unable to defend herself, Drya of the Great 5 Knights of Hallownest took an oath to stand watch of her queen.
5 Knights of Freddy. Oh, sorry, es war so schlecht. I see myself out. Tschüss.
And protect her from any harm. Despite everything the Pale King and the Dreamers had done to save the kingdom, even after the sacrifice of the Hollow Knight, the Radiants once again appeared in the dreams of the bugs of Hallownest.
Verdammt.
The vessel had been pure upon its selection by the king.
Aber
However, during its time in the White Palace, it had forged a connection with its father. An idea had been instilled, it had a mind, thoughts, and it had become impure.
davon habe ich schon mitbekommen, dass die Path of Pain-Szene soll zeigen, dass der Hollow Knight nicht hohl war und dass er doch wenigstens mit seinem Vater eine Verbindung hatte.
The order of the events during this period are murky.
Oh boy.
Regardless, none of them were good. The Moskin of Greenpath were mostly unaffected by the infection, but this aggressive attack on the kingdom did amplify their desire to be reunited with Un. The miners in Crystal Peak fell. Some even merged with the crystals they mined and became mad and aggressive. The mushroom tribe of the fungal wastes that had once allowed pilgrims to traverse their land also became actively hostile against most they encountered. Alongside this, several spoke of a master herald that would signal age's end. A rumored deity that had its own mind outside of the hive mind they shared. A mushroom that went by the name Mr. Mushroom. Reports showed that he traveled across Hallownest unhindered by the infection. As the death toll increased, the kingdom attempted to reduce the spread. The Spirit's Glade was sealed, and the capital city of Hallownest closed its gates so that no one could enter and no one could leave.
Problem ist, die Radiants attackiert durch Träume, das heißt, wie willst du das fernhalten?
The tram and stag stations were shut down. In doing this, the stags slowly fell into isolation. Without a bell to be heard to signal them, they were also forgotten about. Because of this, every region within Hallownest became isolated. The rock base of the cavern above the capital city cracked, and with it, the waters of the cavern of Blue Lake dripped from above. This gave the capital city the name it would be remembered for, the City of Tears.
Yikes.
Although the gates had been closed, the Radiants still wiped out large chunks of the population within.
Ja, weil Dings, okay, cool, ihr habt euch vielleicht eingesperrt, aber sie attackiert durch Träume, diese dumme Sau.
As for their history and records, the parchments of spider silk became ineligible. In these dire times, there were some who still had hope. The Soul Master of the Soul Sanctum saw in his dreams that the cure for this infection could be attained through pure focus, an ability granted through the consumption and manipulation of soul. This dream, however, was a nasty trick by the Radiants.
Oh.
The Pale King ordered that this line of thought be abandoned, but the Soul Master could not understand why his leader refused to at least try to stop the Moth of Light. This Master of Soul believed that if they could use the substance that animated their very bodies, it would help them defeat the infection. So he ignored the Pale King. Within the Soul Sanctum, the Soul Master and his scholars hoarded the soul totems of the kingdom and slowly became intoxicated by its power. The intensity of this substance deformed many of them as it mutated their body into mistakes. The Soul Master, however, did retain his shape and he stayed in the Soul Sanctum. Close by, one member of the upper class of the city watched as the population was driven into madness. Emilita had been cast out by those she had once called friends, and she reveled in their madness. She locked herself in a tower and watched the chaos unfold. Emilita enjoyed the show. The madness of the infection simply evaded her.
Also fragt man sich, warum? Weil sie ist ja noch bis zum Stand des Spiels ja auch noch am Leben. Sie stirbt ja nicht. Man kann ihr auch sogar die zarte Blume geben eben. Jetzt eine rechtliche Blume.
Village, their natural immunity allowed them to ride out the initial infection as they dealt with other issues. The daughter of one of their leaders had entered into a relationship with an outsider. This was not just any outsider, it was the mayor of the Great Five Knights of Hallownest. The Mantis leaders ordered that this relationship be put to an end, but it did not stop the connection they had for each other. This natural immunity to the
Das müsste, also, Semer ist ja die Dame da eben. Ich nehme mal an, dass der Traitor Lord wahrscheinlich dann der Liebhabende ist. Und des Traitors Child ist dann eben das Kind, ne?
Radiance, for the most part, was fantastic for the Mantis tribe. There were some, however, who believed if they chose to worship her light, they would be gifted with power.
Oh.
Unfortunately for the Mantis, one of their 4 leaders fell to this lure, branded the Traitor Lord. This leader
Stimmt. Jetzt sehe ich's erst, das ist ein 4. Sitz. LOL.
turned on his sisters. In response, the sisters forced those who had fallen for the Radiance's light out of Mantis Village. Without a home, the Mantis traitors claimed a new territory within Queen's Gardens, an act of aggression not only against Un, but also the White Lady. These traitors did attempt to dominate this land, but they were met by the power of Dryer. Ultimately, she fell to the constant waves of Mantis attacks in defense of her queen.
Stimmt. Man sieht ja eigentlich, Alter, wie krass viele Details da sind. Wenn morgen Silksong losgeht, ich muss mehr aufpassen. Man sieht ja so viel eigentlich in der Welt und ich hab's nie bemerkt. Aber jetzt das mit dem Mantis los, wie ist mir das nie aufgefallen?
But the traitors also fell to the infection as they became simple-minded creatures. Although Dryer had given her life for the White Lady, this higher being of root had grown so much since she had settled on this land. She was completely unaware that her protector had fallen.
Sie ist komplett
Interestingly
abgeschnitten.
enough, even some of the Mosskin turned their backs on Un and actively chose to worship the Radiance.
Oh boy.
The Moss Prophet and their followers believed Hallownest would be born again and united in the Radiance's blazing image.
Aber sie werden, stimmt, infiziert, das sieht man ja immer mehr. Desto mehr man die Siegel bricht, desto mehr sieht man, wie die komplett zusammenbrechen.
Worship her, they called out to the moth in the Moss Chapel. Hallownest had fallen so far in such a short amount of time. The streets filled with bodies, many bugs reverted to a mind without sapience, and the regions of this kingdom separated. The Pale King's vision for a grand civilization had failed. Within the hive, the bees had lived in the...
Alter, was für eine Bitch ist aber auch diese Dings Radius, Alter. Also nur weil Dings deine Leute dich verraten haben, musst du ein ganzes Königreich in den Tod stürzen und infizieren? Was ist das denn für Manöver? Also wenn sie sich nur so, I guess, rächen würde bei den Moff-Leuten, okay, dann geht's ja noch. Aber einfach an alle gemacht, holy shit. Bei Guess, sie macht wahrscheinlich den Bleichen König verantwortlich, weil er sie überzeugt hat, sie zu hintergehen.
Away from the kingdom of
Aber
Hallownest.
krass.
But after their queen grew too large for the hive and died, they too fell to the lure of the Radiance after the infection seeped into their home and took over. In an action that surprised the few that still lived, the Pale King pulled the White Palace from the physical realm and transported it into the dream realm along with his followers and servants. In these awful times, the Traitor Lord's daughter died and was buried in Queen's Gardens. Upon the notification of this news, her partner, Zemur, chose to renounce her duties as a great knight, entered the resting grounds, and became the Grey Mourner. Within the royal
Die graue Trauernde.
waterways, Isma entered a grove. Inside, she passed away to unknown means. Just outside, Ogrim...
Oh! Das ist eine der Five Knights da eigentlich. Und von ihr bekommt man dann die Ischmas-Szene, mit der man durch das Gift kann gehen. Interesting, okay.
defended her grove and
Und der White
waited for her.
Defender, nice.
As for the fifth and final great knight of Hallownest, Hegemol, his fate is unknown.
Aber seine
His
Rüstung.
armor was stolen as he slept by a maggot desperate to defend its kin. After that, no one knows. During this entire period, deep down in the abyss, some of the discarded vessels managed to climb out of their tomb. The king had sealed the entrance to this place, but they discovered a secret way out.
Okay.
With access to the kingdom, some stayed to explore it, while one left it entirely.
One?
With the king gone and the kingdom having entered a stasis to keep it eternal, and the majority of the inhabitants of the kingdom having fallen to the plague of the Radiance, Hallownest fell into ruin. Her influence had taken their minds, but still, the physical infection stayed inside of
Zum
the
Glück.
Black Egg Temple. In Deepnest, Hornet was raised by the Weavers and midwife in her mother's absence. She knew her mother had sacrificed herself for Deepnest, and as she grew up, Hornet explored Hallownest and protected the ruins from scavengers. While the stags slowly died out as they waited for a bell to be rung to signal the return of the passengers, there were some who survived the infection.
Wie den einen,
The
den wir natürlich
nailsmith
kennen,
who
ne?
had set up his workshop just outside of the City of Tears had, in a way, attained a sort of pure focus as he spent his attention on the forging of a pure nail.
Okay. Das heißt, das, was der Seelenmeister gesagt hat mit dem Pure Focus, war an sich richtig, aber die Version, I guess, von dieser puren Focus war halt falsch eingesetzt falsch verkauft von der Radiance, um ihn zu bekommen.
A goal he would continue to attempt. The ultimate nailmaster Sly hung up his nail and set up a store in Dirtmouth. He realized that the collection of gear was more important than combat. To get more of it, he sold the treasures and charms of the fallen kingdom to those who passed by. His students also moved across Hallownest. Oro relocated to Kingdom's Edge,
Yep.
Matto moved to the Howling Cliffs, and Shio made Greenpath his home and pursued art.
Yep.
For the few who remained of the Moth tribe, they prophesied someone that would wield a dream nail and collect all of the essence and memories of Hallownest.
Das wären
The
wir.
wielder. Yet
Der
this
Träger.
chosen one never arrived, and the tribe slowly died off until only a single seer remained
Die wir aus dem Spiel
tend
kennen.
to the resting grounds alone. The King's Pass had once allowed those who traveled through the Howling Cliffs access to Dirtmouth and the Greater Kingdom. Over time and without maintenance, the connecting bridge collapsed. Dirtmouth slowly faded away as the residents within and the few who passed through entered the well into the forgotten crossroads of the kingdom below. They sought wealth, glory, and adventure, but only few returned.
Oh ja.
The City of Tears had become a shell of its former self, but it was not completely dead. The Tower of Love was home to something
Oh boy, yeah.
interesting. A void being named the Collector. The origin of this entity is shrouded mostly in mystery.
Okay.
Why was it called the Collector?
Ja, wie ist er überhaupt entstanden? Und das ist wirklich sehr interessant. Also, der Collector ist eine sehr bizarre Person. Einfach generell eine bizarre Person, auch generell einfach seine Lore, glaube ich.
Well, it collected objects and, most notably, the grubs of Hallownest and placed them inside of glass jars to preserve or protect them. On a more interesting note, the key to its home in the Tower of Love was later discovered on the body of a bug that had died. This was not a normal
Oh, ein
death.
Void-Tod,
It
ja.
appeared that Void had destroyed this bug from the inside as streams of the substance fell like tears from its face. In the bug's dying moments, it had thought, too long spent together, we become as one.
Huh. I mean, es heißt ja auch der The Love Key, ne? Oder so. War das vielleicht dem Collector sein Liebhaber vielleicht? Das würde auch jetzt zuerst mit diesem Text passen. Huh.
The Void entity and the bug had some sort of relationship, but what it truly meant is unknown. Deep underground in the abyss, the void called out to the Lightkeeper appointed by the Pale King. It called to him to turn off the lights. Within the White Palace, the Pale King also passed away. It is unknown how this occurred, but his followers inside this dream realm still awaited his return. Hallownest was home to a long history of chaos and ruin. This fallen kingdom, however, was just one of many. The population of the Land of Storms had once worshipped the gods of thunder and the gods of rain. Their gods had either abandoned them or died. They sought out the gods and they went out into the wasteland to find more.
Oh, das sind die Gottseeker, also die Gottsehner. Oh, okay. Okay, die tauchen also jetzt auf. Okay, okay. Vom Regen und Donner waren sie also begeistert. Und, oh no, oh nein. Und sie gehen der Radiance nach. Oh oh.
The Godseekers had a mask that allowed them to focus their thoughts. In doing so, they created an entire world with the shared mind in the dream realm, Godhome.
PTSD, Alter.
Inside, they hoped to elevate and eventually attune their minds to commune with the gods of the world with a Godseeker device through ritual combats. On their journey, a Godseeker picked up what lingered of the power of the Pale King, and it arrived in Hallownest, unaware that he had moved on. However, upon the Godseeker's arrival, it was locked inside of a cocoon and dropped into the junk pit of the royal waterways.
Okay.
How and why this happened is unknown. Yet, while
Wir wissen, von was ich glaube, der Jürgen noch so richtig hängt in meinem Kopf, gab es irgendwie von, dass der Dings, glaube ich, Blasphemie begangen oder irgendetwas? Oder ist die Blasphemie-Teil mehr auf uns bezogen, glaube ich, wenn wir in Gotham eintreten? Also irgendwie hat er was falsch gemacht, weshalb er von allen anderen verstoßen wurde auch.
trapped physically, the Godseekers lived comfortably within Godhome. The kingdom of Hallownest had essentially become a giant graveyard. Spirits of warriors waited for explorers to pass by them,
Oh yeah.
yet some parts of the kingdom were alive. The strongest fighters across the land traveled towards Hallownest to compete in the Colosseum of Fools. Every one of them attempted to become the champion of the Colosseum. Despite their dreams of greatness, many died during their trials, and their corpses were dropped into the chasm.
Deswegen sieht man die ganzen Seiten so, so Leute runterfallen in dem Gebiet. Ach du Scheiße, ist das düster. Holy shit.
Below. Even after the Lord Fool's death, the fighting continued.
Stimmt,
As
die Leiche
the
liegt
ages
einfach. Alter.
passed, many who dreamt of greatness took on the God Tamer. Two new fighters were Tiso and the Little Fool. In the fading town of Dirtmouth, the retired Nailmaster Sly fell into a dream and began to wander the forgotten crossroads, a world he had left behind long before. This was interesting. It was as if something deep within Hallownest had brought it back to life, and with it, new travelers made their way towards the kingdom.
Interesting, okay. Das hat also dann Sly rausgelockt. Ich glaube, wir kommen so langsam an den Punkt, wo wir in die Rolle kommen, also denkst du, ins Spiel. Und da bin ich sehr gespannt, weil ich glaube, das wird actually wahrscheinlich ein riesen auch Teil des Spiels werden. Also des Videos nicht.
Of the town, Elderbug, had grown up in an age after the closure of the stag stations and fall of the world below. Still, he knew of the dangers in the well. Dangers that had claimed so many that had entered and never returned. Within the City of Tears, a relic collector set
Der alte
his
Typ
store
da, ne?
away from the dead. Lem was fascinated by the historical artifacts of Hallownest during its golden age.
Die
He
kann
was
in-
also
ja auch,
intrigued
ne?
by the arcane eggs of the civilization that had occupied the land before the kingdom of Hallownest had even formed. As Hornet traversed across this fallen kingdom to protect her mother and father's ruins from scavengers, she also sensed something in the air. A new wave of the infection that reanimated the bodies of the fallen into aggressive husks. Hornet was mostly alone after the Weavers of Deep Nest left Hollow Nest to return to their homeland after they also sensed the return of the infection.
Ja, verdammt.
From the Howling Cliffs to the Black Egg Temple to the cast-off shell of the Pale King's original worm form at the kingdom's edge, Hornet watched as the kingdom was filled with dangers. These bugs simply wandered the region in which they had passed away. They retained their muscle memory of their roles during the kingdom's heyday, but the infection also clouded their minds and made them aggressive upon even a simple interaction.
Und halt noch mehr Leichen, noch mehr Tod und alles so, Alter. Alles nur wegen der Radiance, holy shit.
The miners of Crystal Peak mined. The guards protected the streets, and husks wandered the forgotten crossroads, all in the Radiance's haze. Still, those of sound mind and new arrivals delved into these ruins as the infection brought it back to life. In a deserted village, there was one mender bug who had survived the entire infection,
Ist Albura?
and he kept
Nein, doch
working.
nicht.
When he discovered a
Der
broken
Typ.
sign, he fixed it. As he worked, he wrote of his accomplishments in his diary. To the east of his village,
Das ist Albura.
another bug ran a charm store. Salubra appeared to be completely unaware that the kingdom had fallen.
Huh.
She thought maybe business had just gotten a little quiet lately. Amongst those who sought glory, Zote the Mighty arrived in Hollow Nest. This place reminded him of home. Zote believed names had power. That was why he had called his nail the Life Ender. Yet, Zote's image of himself as a mighty warrior was not the case.
Yeah.
He struggled against the most basic of foes as he wandered the caverns alone. A married couple, Cornifer and his wife, Iselda, also arrived in Hollow Nest. Cornifer wanted to explore the world, and he did as he took on the task
Cornifer, bitte sei da für Sexung, du bist so ein Lebensretter.
to map the kingdom, as his wife set up a store in Dirtmouth. Within Fog Canyon, an explorer also discovered a great way to earn geo from the passing adventurers. Millabelle knew bugs and how to manipulate them. In the safer region of the infected jellyfish-inhabited misty caverns of Hollow Nest, Millabelle set up a bank to store the geo of those who wanted to protect their wealth. But all was not what it seemed. Millabelle planned to run away with all the geo she managed to extract from her marks. In the neighbouring region of the fungal wastes, Legeater either lived there or moved there to set up his own charm store.
Ja, stimmt.
Legeater was blind but had an amazing sense of smell. He believed that if he earned enough geo, he would become a king.
Okay.
It was here the bug created charms, but how he did this is unknown.
Aber es sind zerbrechliche Charms, also er hat sie nicht richtig gemacht, aber irgendwie hat er es hinbekommen. Irgendwas hat er ja richtig gemacht, aber irgendwie beim finalen Step oder so, maybe, halt, sind sie halt da nicht so stabil wie sonst übliche Charms, die wir kennen. Aber irgendetwas dann von der Grimm-Truppe, vielleicht mit dem Nightmare Realm, eben oder Ebene, hat dann gemacht, dass die nicht mehr zerbrechen.
Quest of Bravery, a Cicada warrior sought to challenge Hollow Nest's mighty, terrifying beasts. Cloth had the best intention to die in an intense, climactic battle with her club so that she could be reunited with Nola, her partner who had passed away. But the creatures of Hollow Nest scared her, and sometimes she hid. Hollow Nest was alive once again with new adventurers, explorers, and the husks of the departed.
I guess ihr Wunsch ging auf Erfüllung, weil sie ist ja beim Traitor Lord gestorben, wie man gesehen hat on Stream ja auch. Außerdem sind Hollow Knight bei uns. Oder auch wahrscheinlich bei vielen anderen eben.
Within the Temple of the Black Egg, the Hollow Knight grew weaker and the Radiance's influence on the land grew stronger. Hallownest, however, was still protected by the seal of the Dreamers.
Doch, und jetzt kommen wir, oder?
Many of the vessels that had escaped their fate at the bottom of the abyss had explored the ruins of Hallownest. Many had been lured and brutally killed by the terrifying, shape-shifting Nosk of Deepnest. There was also another vessel who had returned to Hallownest after it had heard a call. As of now, it is unknown what called it, the Radiance or the Hollow Knights. Regardless, this vessel, the Knight, traversed King's Pass and arrived in Dirtmouth. It met Elderbug and was told of the Grand Kingdom below, a kingdom that had become a myth. On its path, the Knight encountered Cornifer as he mapped out the Forgotten Crossroads. It fought with the False Knight that wore Hegemol's armor after it...
Ach, geil, wie das Video gerade so gemacht ist, dass man in einem Metroidvania so eine lineare Story hat. Das ist geil.
Met a Snail Shaman. It learned how to focus soul into powerful magical strikes. It even reopened a stag station and discovered what remained of this species that had once allowed Hallownest to thrive. Sadly, this stag was the last of its kind, and over all of these years alone, it had forgotten the location of the stag nest. With its first passenger in ages, it asked the Knight to reopen more stations as it travelled across Hallownest and ring the bell in each so that it would hopefully remember the location of its home.
Hat sie auch zum Glück.
Hornet knew of the sacrifice the Dreamers had made. She also watched from afar as this vessel explored her kingdom. On a trip to the Howling Cliffs, Hornet encountered Quirrell. He too had felt the call of Hallownest in his dreams. Dreams of winding roads, misted caverns, drowning cities, and a door with something that called to him just beyond. Hornet saw Quirrell as just another explorer that had come to desecrate her kingdom. In a short battle, Hornet
Ein Comic, okay.
noticed that the mask Quirrell wore was important. Something had called him here. With the belief his journey into Hallownest was significant, the warrior of Deepnest returned to her kingdom to watch over the Knights, or as she called it, Little Ghost. In Greenpath, Hornet looked over the body of a dead vessel, but she was interrupted by the Knight. She warned it to come no closer, that she had seen it as it had crept through the undergrowth, and that she knew why it had come to Hallownest. She would not allow it to break the Dreamer's seals.
Hat nicht so gut funktioniert. Lol. Also mal kurz meine Tür überhaupt zu. Das war nicht richtig scheiße. So, let's go weiter. Warum höre ich nichts mehr? Nein! Habe ich irgendwie gemietet? Nee. Ja.
Knight defeated her in combat. As Hornet fled, the Knight picked up the Mothwing cloak from the body of the vessel. This would be just one of the many items and upgrades the vessel would acquire on its path. The Dreamers had watched from the Dream Realm as the plan to save Hallownest had essentially failed.
Yeah.
Over these ages, they had watched it fall as explorers had come and gone. However, they were curious about the arrival of this vessel. From their realm, Lurien the Watcher, Monoman the Teacher, and Hera the Beast projected their minds into the physical realm and spoke to the Knight. They asked if it sought to break the seals. Lurien ordered the Knight to stop what it had started and leave them to sleep in peace. Despite their request, the Knight continued on and found its way to a statue of the Dreamers in the resting grounds. To protect the vessel, the Dreamers lay sleeping. Monoman the Teacher in her archive, surrounded by fog and mist. Lurien the Watcher in his spire, looking over the city. Hera the Beast in her den, amidst the deep darkness beyond the kingdom. Through their devotion, Hallownest lasts eternal.
Aber nicht mehr lange.
It had been through the Pale King's plan that Hallownest had entered a period of stasis.
Ja, also
The
ist da
darkness
wirklich.
and stillness of void appeared to perpetuate one long night. The kingdom was still there, but frozen in a state of ruin, eternal.
Ewiges Ruin, basically, actually. Ja, doch.
Lurien believed that if the Dreamer's seals were broken, the Radiant's light would bring with it dawn, and with it, the complete collapse of Hallownest. Lurien wanted Hallownest to remain as it was. He was loyal to his king, and his king wanted Hallownest to last eternal.
Aber
The Dreamers also did know that the Hollow Knight had grown so much weaker over this long period. Various binding seals had been crafted inside the egg, but they would not be strong enough to stop the radiance. Lurien had to keep the Dreamer's seals active. To stop the night, the Dreamers pulled the vessel from Hallownest into the Dream Realm. It was here that it found itself trapped in a space between body and soul. The Dreamers had displayed their ability to manipulate the Dream Realm, but they were not the only ones in Hallownest that knew how to travel between worlds. Within the resting grounds, the last moth of Hallownest discovered the vessel. In her dream form, the seer guided the knight towards a dream nail. It was with this that it pierced the veil between worlds and returned to Hallownest.
Damn, ohne sie wären wir wirklich
This
aufgeschmissen.
seer had lost so much on her own over all of this time. She had still tended to the graves of the fallen. As she had completed her tasks, the seer felt immense remorse for the crimes of her tribe. They had turned their backs on the radiance that had given them life and light, and it was because of this that she had reacted so aggressively. The seer knew of the Dreamers and the sacrifice of the Hollow Knight.
Oh,
She
yeah.
also knew how to help the knight complete its task to break the seals so that change could come to Hallownest. She did also have another agenda. If she could acquire enough essence, she could be one with the Radiance. The Dream Nail had dulled over time, but the essence it needed to be fully restored flowed around everywhere.
In den
Within
Bäumen,
the
Bossen.
whispering root trees, the warriors who had passed on, and the bugs. Anything that could dream was a source of essence. It was with this ancient moth artifact that it would be able to enter the dreams of the Dreamers and inside destroy them and their seals.
Yep.
Over its journey, the knight explored the many stunning, haunted regions of Hallownest.
Tiefnest.
It helped pull back Sly from the infection of Hallownest in an abandoned village. It also helped Bretta with the same ailment within the fungal wastes. In Crystal Peak, the knight met Myla, a miner who had traveled to the
Stimmt.
region to search for treasure. Her singing could be heard from the entrance of this cavern. As long as she did not fall asleep, she would be okay.
Yeah.
Myla was happy and excited to explore the secrets of Crystal Peak. She also invited the knight to visit her again. She liked its company, and she was sure it liked her singing.
Ja.
In the Mantis village, the knight acquired the Mantis Claw and challenged the Mantis Lords to combat.
Und deren Respekt
Upon the
begonnen.
survival of this deadly conflict, the Lords offered the knight access to Deepnest and the honor and respect to traverse their region without issue. In Deepnest, the knight was lured into the nest of Nosk, a shape-shifting monstrosity
Wichser.
that killed many of the vessel's siblings. The knight, however, was stronger and more fluid than the other vessels as it used its abilities to kill the beast. The infected spiders of Deepnest were just as dangerous as the bugs of Hallownest. The knight delved into the dark, claustrophobic, web-covered tunnels of this region and discovered the distant village, a collection of homes made of silk that hung above a deep cavern.
Und somit auch Hera.
Upon its entrance, the vessel survived a trap and then discovered the first dreamer, Hera the Beast, protected by a seal in the beast's den. With the dream nail, the knight entered her dream and destroyed her within.
Und damit eben den ersten Dings
Hera
durch.
the Beast inside of her dream also killed her physical form. This action had several effects across Hallownest. Hornet became the new queen of Deepnest after the death of her mother, and the protection on the Temple of the Black Egg became much weaker after the removal of Hera's seal. The plague inside pushed against the edges of its prison, and the orange goo of the infection broke out into the Forgotten Crossroads as light seeds transformed the already aggressive corpses of Hallownest into deadly foes. When the knight returned to Crystal Peak, it did not hear the positive hums of Myla. She too, just like many others, had fallen to the infection.
Oh, das ist schade.
Mind, she was commanded by the Radiant to kill the Empty One. She was a perfect soul driven mad. Further in, the knight fought the Fallen and mutated bugs as it acquired the Crystal Heart, an energy core that allowed it to propel itself and fly. As the knight entered the City of Tears, it was met by Hornet at the Fountain Memorial. She had underestimated her half-sibling. It was a resilient born of two gods. She also offered some information. If it still wanted to continue on its journey, it should seek out the grave in ash. The grave she referred to was that of the Pale King's original form of the worm at Kingdom's Edge. It was there that it was tested by Hornet once again in combat to see if it was strong enough to do what needed to be done to save Hallownest. Inside of the corpse of the worm, the knight acquired the King's brand. It essentially selected the knight as King of Hallownest and access to every region within. Back in the City of Tears, the knight climbed the Soul Sanctum, fought with the infected scholars inside, and even defeated the Soul Master. It was in this victory that it learned Desolate Dive, a powerful spell that allowed it to smash through the ground. The knight then climbed the Watcher's Spire, defeated the Watcher Knights, and came across the sleeping body of the second Dreamer, Lurien the Watcher.
Ein bisschen hier vom Storytelling finde ich schlecht, weil technically kannst du ja nicht in den Crystal Peak reinkommen, wenn du nicht das Standing Dark hast, soweit ich weiß, oder? Aber ansonsten ist ja ansonsten nichts falsch, ist nur die Chronologie ist ein bisschen komisch.
This bug, so loyal to his king, and
du Bitch! Fuck you!
Destroyed him. Interestingly enough, this dream realm was a little brighter than that of the last dreamer. A sign that the Radiance's influence was getting stronger. A new dawn was on the way.
Es ist Sachen, die fallen ja nicht auf.
The dreamer's seals, the kingdom became more alive than it had been for many, many years. In the basin of Hallownest, the knight fought with a vessel which had been infected by light seeds. Further in, it picked up the monarch wings, wings of ethereal matter that granted the knight the power to jump higher. In the royal waterways, the little ghost discovered Ogrim. He defended the grove Isma had entered and not returned, and in his time alone, he had crafted statues of his friends.
Oh Gott, das hab ich auch nie bemerkt. Alter, wie geil.
Material in the sewers of Hallownest. This once white defender had become the dung defender, as he had used the vast quantity of the waste of Hallownest in his creations. Further in, the vessel navigated Isma's grove and found her body. The cause of her death is unknown, but she did make a wish. This had created a charm, Isma's tear, that gave the knight the protection to swim through the acid lakes of Hallownest without harm.
Zum Glück, ey, war das eine geile Seite.
The royal waterways, the knight encountered Tuck, a scavenger bug who searched for someone.
Hab ich die jemals angetroffen?
Had something to apologize for. Who the person Tuck searched for is unknown. However, it is likely she sought out Boone, another scavenger bug who was sighted close to the Howling Cliffs. Within the abyss, the place it and its kin had been discarded and hollowed out by the void. It was here that it reactivated the lighthouse and calmed the void as it attained the Shade Cloak. A cloak formed a void that offered the knight the power to traverse the void.
Oder durch Gegner.
Over its short time in Hallownest, the knight had grown so much stronger.
Oh ja.
Within the Howling Cliffs, an acolyte of the Grim Troop had died before it could light the Nightmare Lantern, a powerful device that summoned the troop. Hallownest was exactly what they fed off, a fallen kingdom full of nightmare essence.
Yeah,
The knights discovered the body of this creature and it lit the lantern. In doing so, the Grim Troop traveled from the Nightmare Realm and set up their tents within Dirtmouth. As this had happened, their leader, Grim, sent Grimkin into Hallownest to collect the nightmare essence of the ruined kingdom. Upon the knight's return to Dirtmouth, it entered the tent of the Grim Troop leader and was asked if it wanted to participate in the ritual. Over the following hours, the knight traveled with a Grim child appointed by Grim and fed the nightmare essence harvested by the Grimkin to the Grim child. The troop leader watched as the Grim child grew stronger and stronger.
Bis wir
This was
kämpfen.
important to the survival and the everlasting cycle of the Nightmare Heart. When the Grim child had absorbed enough nightmare essence, the next stage of this ritual would begin. The Nightmare King Grim would be killed inside of the Nightmare Realm. As a result, the Grim Child would feed on the energy, become host to the Nightmare Realm, and then become the new Nightmare
Das ist
King.
ein Zyklus.
This was a cycle that had occurred for countless years. The knight, however, had a choice. If it followed through with the ritual, then the Grim Child would absorb the Nightmare essence and become the new host of the Nightmare Realm. If the knight instead destroyed the Nightmare Lantern in Hallownest, it would force the traveling troop to leave and seek out another ruined kingdom. In doing this, one of their followers, Brum, would be able to remove the mask that had enslaved him to the Grim Troop. Brum would remember who he was. Nim.
Ich habe nämlich jetzt noch gestern Abend, heute Morgen Hollow Knight gespielt für das Sub 20 Stunden 100% Achievement zu bekommen und habe dafür halt auch dann natürlich das mit dem Nagelschmied und dem anderen Entscheiden bei der Grimm-Truppe gemacht, nämlich sie zu verbannen, und habe das gesehen. Ich habe das voll cool gefunden. So.
With just one more dreamer to go and powerful abilities in its hands, the knight traveled to Fog
Und das Crow.
Canyon. The archives of Monoman the Teacher were filled with aggressive jellyfish,
So als
but none
Umu.
of them were as dangerous as a beast Monoman had charged to protect her chamber, Umu. The issue was that Umu had also twisted to the corruption. To the knight's luck, Quirrell also returned to the archives after he had explored Hallownest in an attempt to remember this kingdom. Quirrell weakened the beast as the knight struck it. As they approached Monoman, Quirrell revealed the teacher's mask and removed the additional layer of protection. Inside of the dream realm of Monoman, the knight noticed just how bright the realm had become.
Yikes,
The
ja.
radiance had become so much stronger since the death of the other two dreamers. Monoman knew what the knight sought to do and welcomed it. Its actions going forward to hopefully save the kingdom.
Please!
The death of the final dreamer removed the protection of the Temple of the Black Egg.
Oh boy, jetzt
and
geht's los.
with it, only the Hollow Knight remained. Quirrell had served Monoman for so long, and as the long night came to an end and the Radiant prepared to unleash her light to create dawn, Quirrell felt himself age. The stasis of Hallownest was over. Quirrell had wondered since it had returned to Hallownest where the water that rained upon the City of Tears came from. As he explored, he discovered a blue lake in the cavern above the city, and he felt at peace. It was here that he dug his nail into the ground and left.
Und
After
dann bekommen wir auch ein
this, he
Achievement.
did pass away. How
Oh.
he did is unknown.
Ah, okay.
During its time in Hallownest, the night
So, jetzt frage ich mich zwar, wie werden jetzt die 5 Endings gemacht? Wird es jetzt so bei der Grilltruppe gemacht, wie es kann entweder das oder das passieren, oder wird er jetzt Dings zu einem Punkt kommen und dann werden wir 5 Abschneidungen haben dann? Ich bin sehr, sehr gespannt.
It had changed so much. It had given the nailsmith close to the City of Tears enough pale ore to craft the pure nail, his life's achievement. Having completed this goal, the nailsmith asked that it strike him down. If the knight refused to do so, the nailsmith was free to pursue something else. Speaking of Shio, the knight also learned nail arts from Shio, Mato, and Oro to help it in its journey.
Ich glaube,
The
da fehlt ein Teil
vessel
von
had
Dexiger.
opened up enough stag stations across Hallownest for the last stag to remember the location of its nest. In a bittersweet moment, the last stag discovered the remains of those he had once traveled with. He
Wow.
was the last one here, but he also sensed that others just like him had journeyed out into other lands.
Vielleicht Sixer.
With what appeared to be a cracked egg, the old stag had
Stimmt.
hope for his kind. With the amount of essence it had collected on its journey, the knight even pushed the dream nail to its full potential and woke it up. This collection of 2,400 essence was more than enough for the seer to truly repent for her and her tribe's crimes against the Radiants. In a moment of true remorse, the seer exploded into essence and became one with
Und zumindest
the
dieser Treib
Radiants.
für immer weg. Sie war die
For
letzte.
an entity without a mind to think and no voice to cry suffering, it had changed Hallownest.
Oh ja.
It even angered Zote the Mighty as it rescued him from several compromising situations. Situations that Zote believed he could have survived without the help.
Sicher.
Having destroyed the seals and helped whoever it had encountered in Hallownest, the knight had several options on what to do next. Each thread it traversed would have a very different effect on how its story would come to an end.
Und hier wird's losgehen, ne? Ja, Ending 1 des Hollow Knight, voilà, genau wie ich gesagt habe. Es wird sich zu einem bestimmten Punkt jetzt alles anleinen und dann werden wir jetzt 5 Abschneidungen haben dann. Okay, jetzt bin ich gespannt. Ending 1, der Hollow Knight, das ganz normale Ending.
Having destroyed the Dreamer's seals of Hallownest, the knight traversed the now heavily infested Forgotten Crossroads. Then it entered the Black Egg Temple. It was here that the knight freed the Hollow Knight from the chains of this prison and a fight began. The Hollow Knight was plagued by the infection of the Radiance
so ein geiler
and
Soundtrack.
it was in pain. With every ability, spell, nail art and nail upgrade this little ghost had discovered on its journey through Hallownest, it fought with and defeated the Hollow Knight. As the infection flowed out of the Hollow Knight, the knight focused on it and absorbed it into itself. It became the new vessel of the Radiance, and with it was chained and then sealed inside of the Black Egg Temple. It had become exactly what the Pale King had wanted. A pure vessel, the new Hollow Knight, trapped inside forever. No mind to think, no will to break, and no voice to cry suffering. Its sacrifice would keep Hallownest eternal.
Wow. Das ist echt krass. Sealed Siblings, voilà.
The knight had made so many changes to Hallownest during its exploration.
Warte. By the way, hab auf der anderen Seite 20 Ansprich begleichen Specs gekauft, das ich gedacht habe, ist mir Abstand das günstigste. Okay. Das ist ja dann gut.
Ruined kingdom. However, it had one more region of this realm to discover. On a path through Queen's Gardens, the knight fought the infected traitor lords. If the knight had helped Cloth earlier on their journey, they would have been helped by her. Unfortunately, or fortunately in the case of Cloth, she was mortally wounded but still landed the final blow.
Und er wurde vereint mit ihrer Liebhaberin.
Cloth quickly succumbed to her injuries and died as a result of a great battle, just like she had wanted, finally reunited with Nola. Deeper into this brutal yet luscious region, the knights found the body of Drya just outside of an
Die White
entrance
Lady
to the
eben.
White Lady's grove. Inside, the White Lady spoke to her child. She had felt the weakening of the Hollow Knight over these ages and believed she could somehow help her spawn. At first, she asked that it take the place of the Hollow Knight and then offered it a fragment of the King Soul charm. Her part in the union between herself and the Pale King.
Sorry, das sind Path of Pain. Nicht Path of Pain, White Palace.
The knight traveled to the ancient basin and location of the missing White Palace. Having awoken the dream nail with so much essence, the knight entered a dream realm within a fallen king's mold. Within, the knight found itself in the White Palace. The royal retainers here were unaware that their king had fallen. They waited for his return. These were the lucky few who had survived the onslaught and infection of the Radiance. As the knight climbed this holy place and evaded its dangers, it discovered the body of its father on his throne. The Pale King held the other part of the King Soul charm in his hand. Both parts of the charm slammed together and formed back into the King Soul. With it, the knight followed the charm's guidance into the
Für die
abyss.
Void-Seele.
Right at the bottom, surrounded by the countless bodies of its siblings,
Das
the
ist
knight
so krass.
discovered a new pathway that the King Soul had opened up for it. It was in this place that the vessel entered the birthplace, where it had been born, where it had died, and then began its journey. The little ghost avoided the strikes of the shades who lingered in this place and came across a shiny black egg that offered a reflection of this poor, unfortunate creature. Upon a strike with
das
the
unser
dream nail,
Geburtsort
the
dann, ne?
knight had a vision of the past. How it had climbed its way out of the abyss just as the Pale King had chosen a vessel as the Hollow Knight. How it had fallen into a death pit below. This vision showed it what it was, that these shades were its siblings, and that it was essentially a failed experiment created to save a kingdom.
Aber wir sind
Having
irgendwie
learned the
rausgekrochen.
truth, the King's Soul was engulfed with void and transformed into the Void Heart, a charm that unified the void under the knight's will. As the knight traveled to the Temple of the Black Egg, it was greeted by Hornet. She explained that she would not join it inside as the structure had been built to sustain vessels. If she were to enter, the bindings inside would drain her. She stated that while she would not risk her own life in the initial battle against the Hollow Knight, she would aid her sibling if the moment presented itself. Just as Hornet had promised, during the battle between the Knight and the Hollow Knight, she jumped in just as the Radiance-infected vessel fell weak, and she retained it so that the Knight could finish it off. During this struggle, the Hollow Knight knocked Hornet down and she fell unconscious. In these moments, the Knight defeated the Hollow Knight and it focused and absorbed everything that the Hollow Knight was and became the new vessel. Just as quickly as this had occurred, the Knight was chained within and the Temple of the Black Egg was sealed with Hornet as a dreamer, trapped inside with the Knights. Hornet had become an unwilling dreamer as her sibling had followed through with the ultimate plan of the Pale King.
Stimmt, sie wird dann zum Siegel. So, Dream no more. Oh boy.
In that critical moment in which Hornet held the Hollow Knight at bay, the Knight did not strike it down. Instead, it struck the creature with the awoken dream nail and entered the dream.
What, are we gonna fight the sun?
It was in here that the Knight came face to face with the Moth of Light it had been crafted to contain. Only it would not contain the beast. it would destroy it.
Oh ja.
In a brutal battle, the Knight fought with the Radiance in all her glory. It evaded her powerful attacks and weakened her strike by strike. Having unified the Void under its will, the Void entered this dream with the Knight. So too did the Hollow Knight in its shade form, weakened by its ancient enemy. The Radiance was restrained as the vessel broke free of its form and its shade lashed out repeatedly at the Radiance.
Oh mein Gott, jetzt check ich es. Das ist ja unser Bruder. Oh mein Gott, bin so lost. Ich muss so aufpassen in Sex und Jesus. Alter, wie lost war ich mitten in der Story?
The of light, brighter than essence, was beaten and destroyed as the light inside of her bled out. Then her body was dragged by the Void into the darkness. The sacrifice of the vessel had destroyed the very light that had plagued Hallownest. In going against its father's plan, the population would dream no more of the Radiance. It had broken the cycle. As Hornet woke up, she saw the shattered mask of her sibling. She also saw that the black egg was gone. Hallownest was free. Deep down in the abyss, the shades of the children of the King and Queen of Hallownest were finally free to rest, and they returned to the Void.
Ich könnte mir vorstellen, von allen Endings, die könnten Canon sein, ich glaube, das hier könnte actually das sein, auf dem Silksong weiter aufbaut. Das wäre mein Guess. Könnte aber auch sein, dass einer der Gotham-Endings ist. Also ist einer der letzten drei auf jeden Fall. Glaube ich mal. Who knows?
Instead of traveling to the Black Egg, it explored the royal waterways a little more. Inside, it came across the junk pit and the cocoon sealed in chains. With a key, the Knight freed the Godseeker trapped inside, picked up the God Tuner it dropped, and entered its mind with the Dream Nail. Instantly, the Godseeker was insulted that something as puny as the Knight had entered her realm. She sought gods, not cringers. She believed the gods connected to Godhome would destroy the Knight. Regardless of...
Also ein bisschen zerfetzt haben die Götter uns. Es war so ein Pain, diese 42 Muster zu machen, aber wir haben es geschafft. At what cost?
She watched as the Knight attuned the gods of Hallownest to Godhome through ritual combat. Through each battle, each pantheon, the Knight defeated these powerful entities and ascended the minds of itself and the Godseekers. This allowed the Knight to attune to and fight even stronger and more powerful gods. The Godseekers had come to Hallownest to find the God of Gods. They wished to bask in its power. The Knight rose high in this godly coliseum and attuned to the mind of the Hollow Knight itself. Only in Godhome, it was viewed as the pure vessel.
Oh boy.
The defeat of the pure vessel had an interesting effect. It elevated the realm of Godhome and allowed the Godseekers to discover the most powerful of the gods. Or it allowed the God of Gods to discover them. The absolute radiance.
Oy, oy.
In this series of ritual combat, Godhome had connected to the dream realm of the trapped radiance, and she wanted to fight.
Oh ja, das wollte sie.
In another battle between two very powerful entities, the Knight fought with the absolute radiance.
Moment mal.
Very powerful entities.
Der benutzt Cheats, habt ihr das gerade gesehen? Die Kugel ist literally gerade durch den gegangen.
To fight. In another battle between
da hat er gesehen, aber hier, zack, getroffen, ey, lol.
Only as the one who had unified the void, the Knight brought.
Boah, ich verstehe es. Ja, weil er schon wieder getroffen. Das war wahrscheinlich für die Aufnahmen. Warte, ich habe jetzt voll rübergelaufen.
Brought this darkness into the dream and conflict with it. As the battle came to an end, the Knight shell shattered and its shade fell into the void. From the darkness below, void tendrils latched onto the radiance as a large shade entity emerged from the shadows. Dubbed the Shade Lord,
Sind das
anything
wir?
about this entity is
Okay.
completely unknown. Whether the knight transformed into it as a result of its ability to attune the gods, or whether it had simply waited in the abyss for its time to strike, is up to your interpretation.
Ja, maybe ist das, also während Dings die Moths von ihr stammen, halt von der Radiance, könnte vielleicht die ganzen Void-Leuten eben halt von dem Shade Lord abstammen. Das kann gut sein.
Still, the Shade Lord ripped open the mouth of the creature of light and struck it until it exploded into essence.
Gott sei Dank. Embrace the Void. Okay, jetzt kommt die Abkürzung.
The destruction of absolute radiance at the top of Godhome had several effects. Within this dream realm created by the Godseekers through pure focus, void flooded from the clouds as the Shade Lord, or a void given focus, flew across this domain. From her throne, the Godseeker watched as this entity, a god of gods, took over her realm. She embraced the void as it destroyed her realm and its tendrils wrapped around her
Stimmt,
face.
das war für sein Schicksal akzeptiert.
In Hallownest, in the Junk Pit, void poured out of the Godseeker's physical form and tendrils slashed out aggressively. She had encountered what she had sought, but it had come at the cost of her life.
Oh ja.
High above at the Temple of the Black Egg, Hornet looked around in confusion as the vines of infection around this region lost their power. The Radiance had been defeated somehow, and the infection had died, but the Knight had not entered the Black Egg. It had completed its task, but from afar. However, from the egg, Hornet heard the stomps and chains of the Hollow Knight. It was no longer afflicted by the plague of the Radiance, but it still appeared to be aggressive. So she prepared her needle.
Oh, okay. Könnte das maybe der Anfang sein oder so? Oder halt so kurz danach seiner Fleisch, wie Sexsong läuft? Ich glaube, ich habe noch gar nicht dran gedacht, dass das einfach der Hollow Knight selbst ist, nicht, dass das wir sind irgendwie in unserer Form. Interesting. Das heißt, in dem Ending könnten wir technically noch leben. Okay, jetzt den Ending für Delicate Flower, jetzt bin ich gespannt.
If the knight had given the physical body of the Godseeker a delicate flower from Zemir before its battle with Absolute Radiance, these events would have played out slightly differently. The knight would have still defeated Absolute Radiance in exactly the same way. Hornet would have still noticed that the knight had stopped the infection and she would have still encountered the Hollow Knight. The difference here was that when the Void attacked the Godseeker in Godhome, and in turn travelled through her into the physical world, the delicate flower would have reacted interestingly upon contact with just a drop of void. The flower flashed brightly, and in this moment, the Godseeker and void around disappeared completely. All that remained was the flower. Whether this banished the whole void of this land is unknown.
Gute Frage. Passing of the Age, was?
The knight had met so many interesting bugs.
Der Herald.
One of them was the Herald, of which the Mushroom tribe spoke of, Mr. Mushroom. Throughout its exploration of the many stunning regions of Hallownest, the knight had encountered Mr. Mushroom 7 times, and having worn the Spore Shroom charm, it had been able to understand the mushroom. But all it
das haben wir gestern
gemacht. And mumbles.
Also einer der letzten Achievements.
This entity is shrouded in so much mystery. He knew that worms pulled bugs into their thrall, developed kingdoms, and as the ages passed, they fell. He was the Herald, a symbol of the passing of an age. Regardless of which path the knight followed and how it changed Hallownest, Mr. Mushroom decided it was time to go. He spoke of sandy lands, vast, ancient kingdoms, that Hallownest was not the first and that it would not be the last to fall.
Das sehen wir vielleicht sogar bei Sexon.
Launched into the sky on his way to a new kingdom, an age came to an end. Despite which ending the knight arrived at, Hallownest was changed forever. The Radiant was either contained or destroyed completely, and the territories across this land would be free to rebuild. The Mosskin would continue to wait for to call them back to a dream. The Mantis would defend their village with aggression, and the Beasts of Deepnest would attempt to return to a time before their king had died and their queen had volunteered her mind. With many new adventurers and explorers having arrived in Hallownest during its period of stasis, these bugs could either simply explore a fallen kingdom or help rebuild it. The fate of Hallownest truly is up to you, the player, and your choice of how the knight's journey came to an end.
Wir haben alle 5 Endings,
If the Embrace the Void ending was considered true canon, then it would appear that Hallownest would be under attack from another force, Void, after the Void Beast traveled through the mind of the Godseeker, the only weapon to stop it. Light or a delicate flower. Team Cherry have stated that the canon ending is up to the player's choosing. However, with the Hollow Knight sequel on the way, it would suggest that the second ending, Sealed Siblings, cannot be canon in any sense, as Hornet leaves Hallownest and travels to Farloom, a kingdom ruled and haunted by silk and song, dedicated to faith and pilgrimage. As of now, the fate of Hallownest is of your choosing.
Oh, ich freue mich schon.
I have loved
Ich würde halt sagen, wenn ich müsste sagen, was für ein Ending kenne, sage ich das dritte. Das heißt, da wo wir Radiance halt innerhalb von dem Hollow Knight besiegen und dann halt selbst skripieren dafür. Und wenn nicht, dann ist es einer der Godseeker-Endings eben.
Exploring Hollow Knight and Hallownest over the past few
Sealed Siblings kann es halt nicht
As
sein,
you
ja.
can see, I haven't posted the video in a couple of weeks because the research for this timeline was so time-consuming and extensive. It was also completely worth it.
Ja, das war verdammt gut. Das war wirklich, also das Video war wirklich gut. So nur die einzige Stelle, die ich ein bisschen komisch fand, war mit Crystal Peak, dass man Desolate Dive holen geht bei den Seelmeister und man hat aber dann schon Crystal Peak dann schon chronologisch eigentlich dann abgestempelt. Das macht keinen Sinn, weil eigentlich kommt man ja gar nicht in Crystal Peak ohne Desolate Dive. Aber das ist so eine Kleinigkeit wirklich. Also das Video ist verdammt gut gemacht.
This is one of the best stories I have explored.
Ja, es wird verdammt gut.
159 Stellen Gegner, nein! Kingdom from the minds of Team Cherry. This video would not have been possible without Skyrionn, a mod manager, and these mods right here. The Pale Court mod was also incredibly useful to see what other fans envisioned the 5 great knights of Hallownest to look like before its fall, and how they fought. I did my best to put this timeline into a chronological order, but with the way the story is told, it was pretty difficult to get it perfect, so...
Ja, weil jeder Spiel seine eigene Story erzählt, sozusagen. Unsere Story, wie wir durch Hallownest kommen. Cool eigentlich.
In order that made the most sense. The Dreamers can also be killed in any order, I think. But the order I put them in just made sense for the telling of this story.
Ja.
Normally, when I do these longer...
Ich glaube, wir haben es auch ungefähr in so der Reihenfolge. Also wir haben Hera als erstes gemacht, das weiß ich. Ich glaube, dann hatten wir Lumien oder wie gemacht und dann zuletzt eben Monomo gemacht, also...
Timelines. I try to answer every question that I think of when I explore a world, but for Hollow Knight, I think I am okay with just wondering.
Ich glaube, das war auch die Intention.
Was Mr. Mushroom really a god? What was he? How did the Pale King die? The bodies of King's Moles who guarded his throne suggest he was murdered.
True.
How did the Void kill many bugs out in Hallownest? These are mysteries I'm happy to just accept as mysteries. On a final note, I did want to add every story and bug I could into this timeline, but I did not just want to list things that happened or could happen in Hallownest. The Fluke Bomb, each individual Warrior Dream, and Steel Soul Djinn are also interesting, but I found telling every story would just have bloated the video. I'm sure Mossbag has probably covered them anyway. If you enjoyed this timeline, just go ahead and like the video and subscribe for more content like this. Share it with other people who like Hollow Knight. I hate doing these calls to actions, but I did put a lot of time into this video. Finally, I would like to thank my gold tier patrons and channel members: Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Orin X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, BG Games, Apravis, Arnis,
Machen wir schon ein Like dafür, was war wirklich ein verdammt gutes Video.
Nabar, and 501st Clone Boy. What did you think of Hollow Knight? Which ending do you consider to be canon? And what would you like me to cover next? Let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.
Nice. Und das war's. Das war ein geiles Video. Also, das war verdammt gut gemacht, wirklich. Also, checkt Skyrionn aus, weil, wie es aussieht, macht die Person auch über andere Spiele so eine Timeline und über die Lore und alles so. Und wenn die ähnlich sind wie diese Hollow Knight Videos, oh, ups, nee, das wollen wir nicht anschauen, dann wird's wirklich insane. Ja. Also das war wirklich ein verdammt gutes Video. Ich weiß jetzt definitiv mehr. Ich weiß auch definitiv, dass ich bei Silksong mehr auf die Hintergrund achten muss. Weil, holy fuck, habe ich viele Sachen verpasst, wie es aussieht. Und zwar wirklich manchmal sehr offensichtlich. Oh je. Und ja, aber dann für die, wo auf YouTube das hier schauen, ich danke euch fürs dabei sein. Ich hoffe, ihr hattet Spaß an dieser Reaction. Hoffentlich nicht so spät editiert, ne, Chartex. Ja, und euch wünsche ich dann noch einen schönen Tag. Man sieht euch dann so in den anderen Ecken des Internets, ne? Bye, bye.